The Young Turks, the campaign for healthcare reform is heating up. We've got Democrats getting a little tougher on Republicans. And, of course, leading the charge as usual is the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. They're now running an ad against Senator Chuck Grassley in Iowa. He's a Republican. They've run ads against Democrats before, like Senator Ben Nelson in Nebraska, but now they're going after Republicans who are pretending to compromise but actually not doing so. Before we talk to their co-founder, let me show you an example of the ad they're running in Iowa. Let's watch.
I voted for Reagan, Nixon, George W. Bush, and Senator Chuck Grassley, too. Served my country for over 24 years in the Army. I've talked to friends and neighbors around Iowa, and one thing is clear. No matter what the politicians in Washington, D.C. say, Democrats and Republicans back home want the public health insurance option. When they choose to deny care, private insurance companies make life or death decisions every day. We should be able to choose too. People are hurting, and folks want to change. I voted for Senator Grassley in the past, but when Grassley takes over $2 million from the big health and insurance industries that oppose reform, and then says he won't give Iowans the choice of a public option, I have to ask, Senator, whose side are you on?
The Progressive Change Campaign Committee and Democracy for America are responsible for the content of this advertising.
All right, now joining us, the co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, Stephanie Taylor. Stephanie, welcome to the Young Turks.
Hey, Jane, great to be here.
All right, great to have you. Tell me, number one, how did you find that guy? I'm always curious about that.
Sure. Well, we asked our members to tell us why the public health insurance option matters to them, and hundreds responded, and we just thought that Kevin's story needed to be elevated and heard.
All right, and why the decision to go after Republicans now when you had been targeting conservative Democrats before?
Right. Well, what we're doing with this ad is we want to destroy what we call the myth of bipartisan. As people could hear from the ad, this ad features an Army veteran named Kevin Schilling from Iowa. Kevin's voted Republican nearly his entire life, and he supports the public health insurance option. But somehow in Washington, the word bipartisan no longer means policies that the majority support. It no longer means what Republicans or Democratic voters back home support. And instead, the word bipartisan has come to mean somewhere between Mitch McConnell and Sarah Palin. And bipartisan shouldn't mean catering to the most extreme elements. Bipartisan also shouldn't mean I support whatever watered-down excuse for healthcare reform the insurance companies sign off on. It should mean what the majority of people want, and that's what we're trying to show in this ad.
I like the theme of whose side are you on. Is that going to be in all the ads?
That's the question we've been asking so far. One thing that we've been doing is pointing out that in poll after poll, about 76% of Americans consistently are showing that they support the public option. They are aligned against these very powerful health and insurance interests that oppose the public option. These health and insurance interests have given $80 million to sitting Democratic senators, according to OpenSecrets.org. They've given $2.9 million to Chuck Grassley. And we're just trying to say to these senators, you have to choose a side.
Stephanie, how do you guys raise money to run these ads?
We make the ads, and we send them to our members through email. And we say, this is our strategy, this is why we're doing this is why this makes sense right now. And people have been absolutely amazing in responding. Just to give you a sense, our initial ad buy for Iowa, we were going to air the ad 200 times in Iowa and 100 times in D.C. Today, along with our partner Democracy for America, we emailed 1 million people asking for donations to help keep these ads in the air. And 10 hours later, we've raised over $45,000. And that's going to let us extend our ad buy in Iowa. And we'll keep the pressure on as long as people keep chipping in at our website, healthcarecan'twait.com.
That's interesting. So how many advertising, it's weird to say how many advertisements or ads can that buy because it depends on TV, radio, etc. But
right.
Does $45,000 go a long way in Iowa in running these? And are you running them on TV and radio? I just want to get a sense of how big the campaign is.
Yeah, mean, we're running them on TV. We're running them in Des Moines, Sioux City, Cedar Rapids, Davenport. We're also running some in Washington. We have two goals. We want to make sure that wherever Chuck Grassley is in the state, he's seeing these ads, his supporters are seeing these ads. But the reason we're airing these ads in D.C. is so that Democrats will see them too, because we want them to feel like they have license to not negotiate with Chuck Grassley.
Well, Chuck Grassley has made that simple because he's declared in his campaign literature that he will not, under any circumstances, negotiate with Obama. He says here, I'm firm and unwavering opposition to the government-run health care. The simple truth is that I am and always have been opposed to the Obama administration's plan to nationalize health care, period. So given that he's stated forcefully that he, under no circumstances, will negotiate, why are we continuing to pretend to negotiate with him? You know, and I ask that question not as like an obvious, well, we shouldn't, but I ask it in terms of, I'm worried about the Democrats, Stephanie, that that they're pretending.
Aren't we all, Jink?
Yeah, well, that's true. That they're pretending to negotiate with Chuck Grassley so that they could also get paid off by the healthcare companies, not because they actually think that Chuck Grassley is going to negotiate in good health, in good faith.
Well, exactly. And that gets right back to what we were saying about the myth of bipartisanship. You know, I'm looking at some numbers right now, and in a June New York Times poll, 50% of Republicans and 73% of independents support the public option. And then even after this summer of misinformation and all the hysteria about the death panels and euthanasia, there was a recent national poll in August that showed 40% of Republicans and 64% of independents still support the public option. In Iowa, 36% of Republicans support the public option. So for context, 36% of Senate Republicans would be 14 votes. That is huge bipartisanship. But Republican politicians in D.C. don't represent Republican voters throughout the country. If they did, then we would have 14 Senate Republican votes right now. And so what we're trying to make clear to Democratic politicians is that they should do what actual voters across the country want, that they can have a health care bill that includes the public health insurance option, and that will be a bipartisan bill.
Stephanie, we're out of time here, but let me just make one suggestion. Maybe you should run ads not just against the politicians, but against the media. Because they're the ones that spread the misinformation that real bipartisanship is compromising with people who have no interest in compromise. They're the ones that spread the misinformation about what the public actually wants, when nearly every poll is crystal clear that the Americans are in favor of the public option, and that's bipartisan, as you pointed out. So maybe we need to attack the source of the misinformation.
I totally agree that it's a problem. I think that's a whole different campaign, and maybe one we can talk about some other time.
All right, there you have it. Stephanie Taylor. Perfect. Stephanie Taylor is the co-founder, the lovely co-founder of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and you can find out more at healthcarecan'twait.com. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, Jink.
All right, Young Turks, we'll be back.
I voted for Reagan, Nixon, George W. Bush, and Senator Chuck Grassley, too. Served my country for over 24 years in the Army. I've talked to friends and neighbors around Iowa, and one thing is clear. No matter what the politicians in Washington, D.C. say, Democrats and Republicans back home want the public health insurance option. When they choose to deny care, private insurance companies make life or death decisions every day. We should be able to choose too. People are hurting, and folks want to change. I voted for Senator Grassley in the past, but when Grassley takes over $2 million from the big health and insurance industries that oppose reform, and then says he won't give Iowans the choice of a public option, I'd have to ask, Senator, whose side are you on?
The Progressive Change Campaign Committee and Democracy for America